Okay. All right. Hello, and welcome back to the Joyous Journeys in Life and Business podcast. Today, I have with you my amazing friend, client, amazing human. I want to even say my parent coach, Shelley Clark. Welcome, Shelley.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fabulous. It is so great to have you on the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me on. It's great.
Pleasure. Today, we're going to be talking about launching and loving it. Shelley has recently had a very successful launch, her very first real launch. We're going to talk about that shortly. But before we do, if you don't know Shelley works supporting parents to understand their child's behaviour and develop rich, long-lasting relationships. She's a physiotherapist, cranial sacral therapist, and parent educator. She is a hand-in-hand parenting and aware parenting instructor, passionate about the nervous system, body, and helping families thrive. She is a mother to 3 beautiful children. Thank you so much, Shelley, for joining me. You have had quite an incredible career with lots of qualifications and experience to your name. Do you want to tell us a little bit how you arrived in this space?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So my background is as a physiotherapist. So I've been a physio now for nearly 18 years, I think. So I don't feel like it's been that long since I left uni, but it's coming up close to 20 years. Which I still find impossible to even believe. But I've worked in different areas as a physio. So private practice, sports physio at the Women's and Children's Hospital, doing peds. I really love kids. I have always loved working with kids. And so before my own kids, I was at the Women's and Children's Hospital. Then 10 years ago, had my first child. And as many of us do when we have children, we evaluate our lives, everything. What are we doing? Do I love what I do? Because if I'm going to be away from my kids, I better love what I do. And I still hadn't really found the thing that I just loved. Even though I love working with kids at the Women's and Children's, it still wasn't, my thing. And then when my son was 2, I came across craniosacral therapy, which is a body work manual therapy approach. It's really light touch. So we're working with the fascia in the body. And so it's often, I can treat babies right up to the elderly because it's so gentle and it's very holistic. So I took my son in for a craniosacral therapy session because he wasn't talking actually. And so after 3 sessions, he was stringing some sentences together and I was blown away by the changes in his confidence and, his speech and his language. And I just went, what are you doing? So went and studied craniosacral therapy and really that changed my life. It's so holistic. It looks at mind, body, and spirit. And the person as a whole, what's going on for them emotionally, how that is in the body. So really for the last 8 years, I've been studying that. I've had 2 more kids since then as well. And along the line, was struggling with all the things that a lot of parents struggle with: sleep, exhaustion, some really challenging behaviors. And so after my second, when my daughter was born, I was in, it was struggling. Like it was really hard. I was working a couple of days a week doing craniosacral therapy, but I didn't know what I was doing in the parenting side of things. And I came across hand-in-hand parenting, the idea of connection and, meeting our children, and it changed our life again. So we implemented the tools and I wanted to learn more, became a hand-in-hand instructor, found aware parenting. Again, just the understanding of really connecting with our kids and what's driving our children's behaviors. And then became an aware parenting instructor and now I help parents. So I really combine the two. helping parents to understand their children's behavior, and craniosacral therapy a couple of days a week. So, and moving more into the online space, running my own programs to support parents so that, they feel joy, they feel connected to their children. It feels a lot more easeful. There's laughter and joy back into parenting. And that really is that lights me up. That is what I love doing the most in the world, is combining all the things that I've learned to really support parents. So that's how I landed here.
I love it. I love it. I love the work that you do. And I guess, there's been an increased demand for the work that you do, particularly over the pandemic, with parents needing to adjust everything in their lives. And, the needs of our children have changed so dramatically with the pandemic. Everything has become more heightened. They're running on adrenaline. Their nervous systems are really on overdrive, and so are ours. And we know that they feed off our energy. So that need for parents to be able to regulate themselves and help their children regulate is pretty important for a healthy and thriving world. But I guess what's happened in talking about your business, because you're not new to this work, you have been doing this particular work for a couple of years now. That's how we originally met. And I think one of the things that's really interesting is watching your journey over the last couple of years. There has been this sort of, I want to say, this steep increase in demand, I guess you could say. And so in commensurate with that, you have been almost forced to deliver group courses, because you really were hitting that glass ceiling in terms of the number of clients that you could serve. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, I run my own business in terms of the clinic side of things, and have the 3 kids. So I only wanted to work a certain number of hours a week with clients, and it's been maxed out for a year or so now, probably nearly 2 years, where I can't see any more clients per week one-to-one. And so for a while now, probably about a year, I've been wanting to move more into group programs so that, I can have 20 people learn this information, so deliver some information, but also provide that support in a group setting, which is really, really powerful, because especially it's powerful for any, our group coaching program for business is powerful. But I think with parenting, we're so isolated in today's society and culture that we often parent in nuclear homes with, 2 parents or 1 parent and the kids at home with, minimal or a bit of support, depending on how lucky we are around us with extended family. And so we don't realize that the person next door or across the road or in the next city is actually struggling with the same issues.
Yeah.
And so being in a group program for parenting support is so powerful, because all of a sudden we have parents sharing stories and they're like, oh, my kid's doing the same. Oh, my kid's doing the same. And just that in itself is actually quite affirming, helpful for parents, because they think, oh, great, I'm not the only one struggling with this. So I'm loving the group program so far. It's been great. I think we're 4 weeks. This is week 4. And it's really powerful. It's been really powerful. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about that. So tell us, your course is called Reclaim, and this episode is really to talk about your launch of this program. As Shelley said before, this is a course that she wanted to bring forth for quite some time, I would say at least 12 months, just really wanting to introduce this course. So let's wind the clock back 12 months. Because this program was on the cards, but the truth is that this time last year, and I know we've talked about this, that this was not something that was coming through you at this point last year. So I'd love to know, in order to get to this point, what like what changed in terms of who you've become in moving towards this time? Because Shelley's a manifesting generator, for those of you who follow human design, and you know, there were lots of things going on for you over a long period of time that it was like, I want to, it's not the right time, I want to, it's not the right time. And I know that we've talked about, you know, like now that it's happened and it's been so successful, that reflection has been like, wow, like look how far you've come. What was it? What was different to the Shelley 12 months ago to the Shelley who's just launched this program?
Man, where do I start? I think it's been a journey, and if for anyone listening, if they're wanting to do, you know, build an online business and a program or share some knowledge or whatever it is that they want to do, it is a journey. It has been a journey. Some people can just see someone launch something and go, gosh, how does she just launch that and do that? And I'm like, well, there's been like a year backlog of I can't do this, or I'm no good at this, or like, you know, mindset stuff, belief work.
Yeah.
So that's been a big part of it. Transitioning from like your in-person therapy space to the online world, I've come up against many different blocks of posting on social media. You know, I was terrified a year ago, probably 18 months ago, of hitting live on Facebook or Instagram and thinking, I can't do this. What have I got to say? And I'd sit there for half an hour with sweaty palms before hitting live. And my husband was like, have you started yet? I'm like, no, I haven't started yet. Like, I'm
still working up to it.
He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just like so nervous. And so I think, yeah, a year ago, it was just working through a whole lot of fear and, you know, belief around what I've got to offer and my knowledge and, you know, different things like that. Setting up, like last year, I was going through setting up my website and, you know, really solidifying my branding and my message and what I, you know, who I'm here for, what I'm wanting to do. So I think it just takes time sometimes to get really clear on those messages and those things.
Sometimes you've got to have some clients, some runs on the board,
yes,
so that becomes clearer, because, you know, for those watching, Shelley, you tend to work with professional parents. That tends to be your clientele, but that was never going to be what you would have started out as, but it's what you ended up as. You found that accidentally, right?
Yeah. And I would say, like, just starting and doing clients and seeing, you know, and a lot of that refinement has come from in the last year.
Throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Yeah. And seeing and realizing that actually, yeah, a lot of the people that I work with are doctors or nurses or practitioners or teachers or lawyers, or like they tend to be more from that professional background. And I didn't realize that until you pointed it out one day, or like we were talking about it one day. I was like, oh yeah, actually in the last 5 clients that have come to me, they've all been in that those sort of fields. So so that has been like part of it, is doing it. So being scared and going, yep, I think having support around me has been huge. So being in SOULiD, your business program, and working with you, I work with Marion Rose as a mentor, and so do my parent mentor. But really, in the last year, that's probably shifted to a lot more support around business and facilitator. Yep. And so like mentoring as an instructor.
Yeah.
And almost supervision type work. So yeah, a lot of inner work, but also having structures in my business, because I was probably overwhelmed a year ago by all the little things that needed to be done. And I was easily overwhelmed by a to-do list and didn't quite know where to start. And so then I'd go, oh, too much. shut down.
Yeah.
So whereas now I've got a lot more tools in my toolkit of what that feels like in my body, of noticing like, okay, actually this feels overwhelming. What's the one thing I need to do today? Just get that one thing done. Or do I need to rest and have a nap? Or what are my needs, and meet my needs? But also I think the structures that I've learned through SOULiD have been so good at looking at each part of my business. And so it's not overwhelming, looking at calculations, looking at what my messages are, looking at my calendar, having that has been so good for me.
And still in those moments where you identify that you're in overwhelm, because I think that's often, just learning to identify that, but then being able to go, okay, I'm feeling this, but still having that ability to take action, even if it was like, I'm going to have a nap, but when I get up, I'm going to do that one thing, that one needle moving thing.
Yes. I think that has been the biggest thing as well, is just stepping like one step at a time. And it's really hard, I think, when we're in the online social media world, where we can see the next person that's posting, or we can see the next, someone that's similar or works in a similar field. It's so easy to go, oh gosh, they've posted today and I haven't got anything organized, shut down. And I've noticed those thoughts. I've noticed that person in my head that says those things, and they're just not true. So I've kind of really, with the work that I do with Marion Rose, which is actually what I teach, to help us to identify our thoughts and to just put loving limits in place and go, you know what, I'm not willing today to look at social media. I'm not willing to look at other people's things. I'm just going to focus on what I need and what's next in my steps. And that's like almost blinkers on, has been really helpful for me.
And I want to chime in around that, because I know that part of what you did was kind of unsubscribe and check out, not only following social media, but you left quite a few, say, educational learning groups and decided that's it, no more courses, like I'm doing this now, like no more information, it's time for action. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, the last probably 5 or 6 years has been study for me. Like I've been studying craniosacral therapy. I was in hand instructor mentoring for a year, aware parenting for a year, Marion Rose's work, the Marion method for another year. And then I was in different containers, learning around all sorts of different things. And so a lot of my energy was spent learning from other people, which is wonderful. But I also identified that I love learning. It's a big high value of mine. But there was also a part of me that was doing it because I felt like I needed to know more before I could get started.
So it was actually coming from a place of lack, essentially.
Yes.
Your motivation there was coming from a thought around lack.
A part of it, yes, a part of like, I love learning, so I love learning more. But I just was in like, okay, I'll learn that, and I'll learn that, and I need to learn that. Oh, that's new. Oh, I'll learn that too. Because I was like, I need to have all the information before I can go and teach it. But it's just not, that's not going to be a reality. We're not going to be able to know everything before we start.
And is it true?
No, and so,
true.
Yeah. And so I just, at the start of the year, I was like, right, this is the year that I start to put things out into the world, and do my work and action the things that I've been journaling about for probably 8 years. There's journal ideas in, 15 journals that I've got, that I've built up from the last 10 years of mothering and going on this journey, that I want to start to share with people. And this year was like, right, that was the focus. So I pulled out of, containers and things that I would just spend time reading, or I would read something and I would respond or reply. But every time I was doing that, it was energy that wasn't in my business. So yeah, it was a conscious choice or decision to just really kind of, again, focus on putting my ideas. I actually said at the start of the year, this is the year that things get out of my journal and into the world.
Wow.
So it's happening.
It was a decision. It was a decision. You just decided, I think is the difference, is what I'm hearing. Like the difference between Shelley 12 months ago and the Shelley now is that she just decided enough. Like enough. I'm enough. And what I know is enough. And I'm doubling down on what I want to create here.
Yeah. And the I'm enough. Yeah. And the I'm enough part is a big one. You know, we often, many of us carry that, oh, am I enough? Do I know enough? Am I good enough to teach this? Do I know it well enough? And I think partly we do need to be doing things for a few years before we do really embody a piece of work or like, you know, knowledge. And so part of it has actually just been the journey for me to really deeply know this work and know that I know it. And that has just been trusting how long that has taken as well. I really do trust that those years were valuable years to work through all of the things at my pace.
Yeah. And consolidate.
So even if someone's listening now and going, oh, I really want to start my business and it's hard and I'm in that phase where it feels overwhelming, to just be really like compassionate with myself at the pace that it has happened in, you know, however many years it's taken me. And this year it has been fast.
Yes.
Like, you know, this year I've launched a podcast. I launched 21 Days of Play, which is a play course, and started a podcast and launched Reclaim. So a lot has happened in this year, but it's almost been like a slow build up, and then right, okay, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yeah. And I sense with that too, there was, you know, all the while, you know, I know this is something I talk about. You have been really increasing your capacity to hold that within your own energetics, within your own body, you know, just, you know, using that muscle to expand so you can hold that level of intensity, because it's intense. And, you know, that takes work, just like building a muscle. It takes work to expand that over time. So that's been huge as well.
Yeah.
So in talking specifically about the launch, the lead up to the launch, so I did mention this at the beginning, but just for the people who may have missed it, Shelley did have an $11,000 launch for her very first launch, first real big launch, and which is just huge. Like, to hit a 5-figure launch, she had 22 people enroll, which is just amazing. And I want to say this, particularly amazing given your stats, because you don't have a huge following. You had an email list that grew. When you started your launch, you had 200, if I'm right, roughly.
Yeah.
And then during that launch, your email list grew by a third to 300.
Yeah.
You know, 300 people in total, which is just huge. And then out of that, and how many followers do you have on Instagram, Shelley?
I think now it's 1,250 or something.
Yeah, and that's been growing quite
slowly. That grew a couple of hundred people, I think, while I was like doing the launch.
Yeah. So, you know, I think this is a really interesting thing is, you know, Shelley doesn't have astronomical numbers. She's got a fairly conservative audience for someone who's been doing, you know, been on social media for a couple of years doing this work, and she's had these remarkable results. So I want to dig into what were the things that you did to prepare for the launch that was different to what you'd done before? So leading up to the launch, what were the things that you did, the strategic things that you did to grow that audience and to lead people towards open cart day week?
Yeah. Well, in terms of what I've done differently to before, I really haven't done a proper launch before. You know, there's been things that I have sold before, which might have been a webinar or something where I might a week before kind of say, hey, I'm doing a webinar. Anyone want to join me? So that's sort of been my thing that I've done before. And I might get 5 or 10 or, you know, a few people sign up. This time it was much more planned out and right from, you know, a few months before. And I would say launching the podcast in March was probably a big part of that as well, of people listening to the podcast. I think probably maybe half the people that joined Reclaim when they introduced themselves said, I've listened to the podcast and I was, you know, really keen to join and learn more. And I was like, oh, wow. You know, I'm still shocked that people listen to it's so new for me still that people listen to the podcast. I'm like, oh my gosh, you listen. Yay.
Yeah.
It's still a novelty for me to have people say that they listen to the podcast because I produce it and I love it and I put it out in the world. But it's still new to me that people listen and have listened to every episode. And I just love that. So that happened in March. So that probably built a bit of a, you know, more of an audience of who I am and what I do and the work. And so certainly my following and things have since March it's only really been this year that has been growing.
Yeah.
But then so we started the course the start of August. I think it was mid-June. We'd had a session, you and I, and we're like, okay, let's map out what this launch will look like. So, you know, 2 weeks, had a lead magnet, which was a PDF around understanding your children's behaviors. And so I did that for 2 weeks on social media. Come and join. Here's my free thing. And then I did a free 3-day reset challenge, which was really the big thing. Driver into the course. And so that was 3 days. I had nearly 100 parents, 97 parents sign up for that, which I was blown away by. I was like, oh my gosh, that is so amazing.
And you had incredible live response. Like the numbers were just blowing my mind and were consistent across that whole 3 days. So I had opted in as well and was jumping on the calls and, you know, of course, loving those sorts of stats. I was looking at the numbers of how many people and, you know, out of the 90 odd who had joined, you know, at one stage, I know on one of the calls there was, you know, up around 45 people on the call and it didn't drop much below that in across those 3 days. It had very high engagement right across that whole time.
Yeah, which I don't really have any idea about this stuff.
And you had great open rates on the replays too, because I know we talked about that.
Yeah, so again, this is stuff that I have I've learned all really from you. I don't have any idea about what is standard or good or any of these things. So I'm just like a novice and saying, Sharon, is this good? Is an open rate of 60%? Like I think we've had a 60% open rate of the replays. Is that a good open rate? And so it is about learning these things around what is expected around a launch and which I'd never done before. So the 3-day reset challenge was wonderful. And jumped on the Zoom call every night with the parents, and it was 3 days to reset your family. And parents, I got lots of really great feedback for just that. And then from there, from the end of that, the cart opened. And so opened the cart for 10 days, I think it was. And ended up with 22 people join the course by the end. So
amazing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about launch week, those 10 days.
Yeah.
tell us about that. What were the things that you were doing in that 10 days?
Well, social media. So I had a couple of posts per day. So a lot more presence on social media than what I probably had been previously. And so I just upped that and started doing some reels. And, you know, again, it's like a lot of my own blocks around fear of doing these things or showing up more. Just, I put all of those aside really and was like, you know what? It's just not even true. I'm just going to do it. It was like one of those.
And your
I'm
reels are fantastic.
just doing it. So
you have some fantastic reels.
Thanks. Well, it's just one of those things where you're still, I just have a lot of self-doubt. So, you know, just doing it and not even really caring about what like family or friends or others are going to think or say. Just, this is part of my business and this is what I'm doing. And so
it's a great way to look at it. There's a lot of gold in there. People listening, a lot of gold in there, like right there. Doesn't matter what people think, I'm doing it anyway. It's not about them. It's not about their thoughts or judgments or opinions.
Yeah.
There's so much wisdom in that.
And it's even got to the point for me, it's not even about me, actually. It's about the work. Like for me, so that's probably what's happened this year. I'm like, this is less about my own fears now and more about the parents and the kids that I'm helping.
Yeah.
Because
your vision is bigger, right?
Yeah.
When we worried about, oh, that's scary doing a reel, it's like, it's small fish.
Yeah.
You know, like you're looking at the big fish. You're looking at the big shark.
Yeah. And it got to the point where staying small was painful because I was like, no, actually, I just need to now share this message. And it became more about the message and the kids. Like I think about every family. So 100 people that joined Reset, and then 22 people even more deeply, that ripples out to, you know, however many kids that if parents change one thing or if they listen to their kids' feelings once and that kid feels a little more seen or heard, like that is for me is the driving force for me.
Yeah.
So
the change of those 22 people enrolled is at least 100 people.
Yeah.
And that ripples out from there.
And that's what's driving me. So even sometimes when I'm like, oh, do I post this? Do I not? You know, and I'm sort of in my head, I come back to that and I come back to like, this is why I'm doing it for these kids, for all kids. And for the parents too, because we feel more joy and we feel, you know,
totally.
It changes our lives too.
It's a big phase of our life.
Yeah.
For it to be miserable and
you don't want to survive it. You want to thrive. You know, how can we thrive?
Yeah.
So going back to your question, what else did I do in Car Open Week? So yeah, social media. And then I also had emails. Pretty much there was an email out to my email list when it opened, a reminder a few days later, and then 4 or 5 days before cart closed, there was an email each day saying, come and join us. And here's the details. And if you want to find out more and all of those sort of things. I think that's the other thing that I just went, that selling, because again, me kind of going, oh, I don't like selling to people, but actually I think you helped me flip this to just, it's serving people. And this is the information. This is the course. This is, if you feel called to come and join me, come and join me. And just giving them the information about what's in it. This is what you'll get. Come and learn from me if you feel called to. And that's all it was. So I think that shifted as well, where I'm like, I'm just sharing what I do in the world. How do people even know what I do if I don't share it and don't tell them how they can come and work with me? And so just doing those things was helpful.
And leverage on that concept of selling and serving. You know, you were doing some really great follow-ups with people who had expressed interest. So I know that we talked about that. And, you know, there were people who you had reached out to privately and said, hey, I know you're interested, you know, and, you know, soulfully asked, you know, would you like to join, or is it a not for this time? And you had a great response from that, didn't you?
Yeah, it was probably 2 or 3 people that that they had said, yes, I'm keen to join. But it got to that like last Sunday night of when the cart was closing and they hadn't. And I just sent them a message because parents are busy. I forget
100%.
I say I'm going to do something and then I forget all the time. It just goes out of my brain. So when someone says, hey, did you want to follow up on that? Or just reminding you this is closing. I'm actually like, oh, thanks for the reminder. Yes, I'll do that right now. And so it was
Instead
just
of
more from,
making a story up about it of, oh, they don't want it, it's me.
yeah, exactly.
You just went, hey, are you still in?
Yeah.
Here's the link.
Yeah. And I think it's because I wasn't attached to the outcome. So I wasn't making the outcome of it mean anything about me. It was like, hey, do you want to join us? If you do, then, here's the link. And yeah, I think that's been a big shift for me too, is just, here's my work. I'm really solid in it. This is what I do. This is how I can help you. And, here it is in the world. And rather than a year ago, there was just heaps of doubt and still unsure and still a lot of, overwhelm.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just remarkable hearing how much you've really, and I can't find a better way to explain it, but gotten out of your own way. You've just stepped aside and gone, this thing's bigger than me. This thing is so much bigger than me. And just, stayed true in that throughout this whole entire launch. It's like, no, it's got to happen. It's got to come through. It's just so good. I want to talk about pricing because we went on a little bit of a journey around pricing your course.
Okay.
Tell us about that journey and whether your strategy worked in the end.
Well, I think it did. I'm sure it did. So originally I was going to charge more, almost probably double the price that we had. And that was, I've never really run a course before. So I was like, this is going to be a great lot of content, and they have a lot of one-on-one or like group calls and things. So I was just sort of picked a number really that I thought, but you and I discussed things and we dropped the price or chose a price that still felt comfortable. And once you actually said that, when you said that around, the current economic, landscape for people, and to get more people in for this first round at a price that's like, yes, let's do it, where they don't have to think quite as much about it.
And it's an easier sell for you. Ultimately.
Makes it easier. And it also made it then I didn't even think about that, or I wasn't then concerned or worried about like, oh, will they, is this too much or anything like that. We set that price, and I actually think we probably had more people join in at that price. So it ended up probably being a more successful launch. Who knows? I wouldn't have known how many I would have had in at the other price. But I am glad that we did that, because we've got a larger number of people in the course, which also builds that energy. And there's lots of questions. There's lots of people on the calls. It's really, really great. So I'm glad that that's what we came to and talked about. And it's just a learning thing. Like if I'd done the price at, the higher price and had 8, it would have just been a different experience, or 4, it would have been a different experience. But I'm really glad, because having that number, it's just building a beautiful energy.
And I think one of the things that I remember saying was, around this being such a body of work that is, accessible to more people at the price point that you went with. And I think the proof's in the pudding with the number, given the size of your audience and the number of people that did jump in. And this is all organic, by the way, for anybody listening. Shelley didn't have any paid advertising or anything like that, and hasn't had at all in any of her audience growth. So, it's really it's a really great thing because, you know, this isn't the end of the line for you either in terms of your client journey, is it? There's places where people can go beyond this course to work with you.
Yeah, I think that was helpful as well to work out where this was in my offerings for people. So, you know, I've got lower price point course for 21 days of play and a couple of little webinars and free things. The podcast is free. So there's, you know, working out a client journey has certainly been something that I've been working on over the last year as well, of like offerings that kind of make sense in someone's learning and parenting journey. And so, yes, I think your point around let's get more people in at this price point so that we expand and reach more people, knowing that if people want to dive a bit deeper, there's one-to-one that we can do, one-to-one packages. I might do some smaller group coaching, mastermind type things. I have many ideas of lots of things that I still want to offer. I think having one course launched and under my belt and, you know, working out how I like to run it and create it has been really exciting. And it has been hard. Like it's been like, it's been an effort. Like there's been late nights at times, and
yes, there has been some late nights,
really late nights.
Yeah.
Because it's the first time that I've done it. It's the first time that I've written a sales page, and it's the first time that I've created course modules and video content. And this is all learning. I'm literally learning this as I've gone along. And so I'm really proud of myself actually for
it really is fabulous.
Like
I purchased Shelley's course, and so I'm in the program as a client of Shelley's, and the quality of the way that you've put the program together is just amazing. It is hands down one of the best programs put together that I've seen. No, absolutely. And I think the thing is, Shelley, is, because, your effort to make the ability for the course content to be accessible by all types of learners, there's captions on every video. There's, they can get the audio transcripts. They can get the written transcripts. Like you've just gone above and beyond in delivering I want to say above and beyond compared to most other course creators out there today. And, I think that where you're heading is where we need to be. There's no doubt about it. But you've just put it together so professionally and, so easy to follow, so cohesively. It's just like, honestly, that's absolutely testament to, to what, not only what you're capable of, but your professionalism and the standard of what you're here to deliver. It's just so awesome.
Oh, thanks. Makes me want to cry.
Oh, it's
I think it makes me want to cry because I'm like, oh man,
you've been lots of
late nights
went into that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, I know we've talked about this so many times. You've been so excited by the fact that yes, you've had those late nights, but straight off the back of that, you're really excited about, but it's done for next time. Like next time it's going to be so much easier and, just ready to, to drop, and you'll just be able to facilitate, which is a beautiful space to arrive in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just been a wonderful learning curve and like a journey to go through. And I think I was saying this earlier, that until we actually start doing it, it's, that is where we learn. That's where we go, oh, actually, I want to create this next time. Or actually, that's a whole nother course. Or, or that's a gap in parents' knowledge or a service or something that, so I think doing it for me has been the thing where I'm like, okay, great. It's actually happening. Whereas for a long time, it felt like nothing was happening. And for many years.
But it was what was happening on the inside.
Yeah.
There was still a lot of who you were becoming in all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's just been great. I've loved it. I've loved this whole process. And I would say having support, so being in SOULiD and having guidance, I wouldn't have known where to start or what to do or how to map out a launch without your support. And I would say that people can do a launch differently, you know, that you can you can change things to suit you and your business and product and how you work. But I think having a roadmap to start with has been super helpful, because next time I can go, oh, actually I really like that, or like I would have a longer cart open, or I would have a shorter, or like we can go over those things and tweak it and change it. But I think having the roadmap was so helpful. Otherwise I wouldn't have known what to do, or, you know, what's next.
Yeah, right. Well, that's good, because I was going to ask you what was the value you would put on having one-to-one support in the lead up to and during the launch. So just for people listening, Shelley is a member of SOULiD. She is a founding member of my SOULiD membership, but we've also been working together one-to-one for around about 6 months, getting close on 6 months anyway, for most of this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, what kind of a value would you put on that?
I love working one-to-one with people. I place high value on working one-to-one anyway. I've had a one-to-one parenting mentor for coming up 4 years, 3.5 years. So I myself love working one-to-one because it's specific support. So I place a high value on that anyway. I don't know, you can't put a figure on it for me, because that's how I've learned something. That's how I've learned this. If I don't know something, who can I have as a mentor? Who can I reach out to, and who can I learn from? So I've had many different mentors, and mentorship is a really high value of mine. So, so anyone that is wanting to grow in their business, I think having one-to-one is so specific and to your business that it just helps you, you know, find a path forward. But for me, the thing that really helped, because there was a period of time, like we did a bit of one-to-one work last year. Oh no, then I ended up in Clarity, your course, and then into SOULiD. But I found there was a period of time from like December to February, March, where I didn't have one-to-one.
That's right. Yeah.
I realized that if it was just me thinking about, it's just me and my business. So I've got a VA for support as well, she's incredible. And she does a lot of, you know, PDFs and Canva and different things, but it's still my business. So having someone to help bounce ideas off of and kind of see where we're going before I can kind of see that myself. And just to sort of think about my business was so important, because I noticed in that time where I didn't have the one-to-one, it was a bit washy, and it was a bit like I was a bit lost in my own direction of what was next, that I had no one to kind of say, hey, well, what do you think of this idea? Or what do you think of this idea? And having that is really helpful for me.
Yeah.
Just having that check-in of like, okay, well, how's your finances going? You asking me that question and me going, okay, yeah, haven't really looked at that yet. Okay, yep, that needs an update. I think it's helped me shift from another big shift from a year ago. A year ago, it felt like I had a hobby, and that I did a bit of, I saw a few clients in my own little clinic, and even my own little clinic. It was just small, you know, it was a little couple of days a week. I didn't feel like, I had a business, or I was a business owner, or I ran a business. I was a practitioner doing my own thing.
Yeah.
And that, you know, whereas now I'm like, okay, well, what is happening with my finances? Where's my taxes going? You know, what do I need to register for? And where's the direction of the business? What am I doing next? Like, I feel like one of my goals with you when I first started at the start of the year was like to feel like I own or run a business.
And do you?
Yeah, I do now. I run a podcast. I've started the clinic is full and
but even going back to talk about finances, you had the biggest month we don't need to talk about numbers, but you did have the biggest month that you've ever had in June this year. But also part of that is, things like getting your finances set up so that you're using, proper accounting software and, all of that is far, far better managed than what it was 12 months ago as well. So while all of this marketing and course creation stuff and podcasting's been happening in over here, you've also been doing stuff in the back end that is, taking on that, that business owner persona, I guess.
Yes. And also that helps reduce the overwhelm, because if you know that those things are quick and easy to stay on top of, it's taken care of. Whereas a year ago, I was so completely snowed under by the things that I don't necessarily enjoy or found hard, that I would just leave them. Whereas
and then they pile up
and then it gets worse. And so
box full of receipts.
Well, yeah, that's probably what it was like, And so having and I still don't necessarily do these myself, but as a business person, I've got people to do them for me now.
Yes.
So, or I've worked out systems where it's much easier for me to do them. And so that has been a big shift, that I actually run my own business and this is my work, and that it's, this is who I am, or, this is what I do in the world.
Love it. Love it. What advice do you have to others who want to make this change and run a similar launch, maybe launch their first course or really double down? What advice do you have for them?
I think coming back to the belief stuff first, like compassion for themselves, really looking at where's your energy going, that you can close down those tabs. When I talk about tabs, I mean, like where can you close down some of those things that drain your energy or take it away from what is your purpose? What's your mission? Or, what are you here for? So getting really clear on that. And then that belief work of I can do this. This is mine. Putting those blinkers on around other people, because we can easily, even just this last week, I was swayed by things that I read and could feel myself come a bit off center, and having some practices and support in place, so the inner work practices to come back to, that has been so beneficial for me, so that it's really solid in myself. Also getting family support on board if you've got it. Like I said to my husband, this is going to be a big a big month. It was about 2 weeks of school holidays was when I was doing reset. So I didn't work in the clinic during that time. So I didn't have CST clients. And my husband, I said, this is going to be big. Can you do a bit more with the kids? And he took them away for a day or so, and he did a heap of work around the house. So he picked up a lot of that work so I could really focus in on this. So getting in some support, telling family, asking for help, clearing your schedule so your other things are taken care of, so that you can really focus in on what you're wanting to do. And having a plan, going and join SOULiD.
Yes.
That would be my advice. Having a support, having support and, a plan and help, that's been crucial. Yeah.
So good. Shelley, I do ask 3 questions to all of my guests on the podcast. So of course I want to ask you, what would your parents describe what you do for a living? Or how would your parents describe what you do for a living?
Mum and dad would describe it as supporting parents to understand their children. They've listened to every podcast now.
Amazing.
Which has been huge for them. So, and huge for me, actually. So they very much know what I do. Yeah. And they would describe it as, yes, supporting parents, passionate about understanding children's behavior.
Amazing. That's great that they know. So many people laugh at that question.
Yeah.
Shelley, what has been the most joyous part of your life and business to date?
Joyous part of life and business. I think.
Feel free to give two answers, one for life, one for business.
Yeah, I think the most joyous part of business is being able to share what really feels so true for me. And like, it's this deep drive of wanting to help parents to change the way we relate to kids. And that is really what drives me. And being able to do this now in my work, honestly, I feel so grateful. Hearing people when they say, I've listened to the podcast and this changed, or I've read this and it really helped. It's like, that is just everything. And then for life, I think building the life that we really desire with my husband, and, really building a life that we enjoy and love, and creating that together. So he gets to do the thing he loves in the world, and I get to do the thing I love, but our kids, get to do their things, and just that creating the life that we, it's conscious. It's like what really lights us up, what brings us joy, and having family, like connection at the heart of the family is, it's just everything.
I love it. Your family is beautiful too. They're a delight to hear your family stories. And, I know that, even in terms of financial and time investments, that, you're very much always linking that back to your values, which I just think is, means that you're always living in alignment with, your true self, which is really beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. Try to. Well, and as we uncover who that true self is, it becomes more and more aligned with who we really are. And I think that has probably been, in the last 10 years of mothering, that's been the biggest thing of coming home to myself, of uncovering who is Shelley under all of our conditioning, that now I get to just share this because this feels so true to me. So,
Love it.
Thanks.
Love it. Shelley, where can everyone go and find and follow you?
Yes. So on Instagram, it's _Shelley Clark _ on Facebook, it's Shelley Clark Mind Body Parenting. My website, www.shelleyclark.com. And the podcast is Mind Body Parenting Podcast with Shelley Clark.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, and congratulations on your Reclaim launch. Shelley, will Reclaim be launched again anytime soon?
Yes, in the new year. So
the new year.
Yeah, it'll be in January.
Fabulous. Yeah. I cannot recommend it more highly. Honestly, go and do it. Do yourselves a favor. If, I think what a great time to reset the start of the year, families getting back to school, getting back to all the things. Highly recommend that program. Shelley, congratulations on your recent launch. And I just can't wait to see what's next for you. I adore working with you.
Oh, thank you. The feeling is mutual. So thank you very much.
Thank you, my love.
Bye.